And then something else that you talk about, which is, again, somewhat connected to this, is um, going through, like a digital detox, right? So
Mhm.
this is something that, people talk about quite a bit, but there's like different ways that people do it. So in your opinion, what is the best way that people can approach this concept to, again, make sure that they're not exposing themselves to these like brain harming forms of content that, we call bird brain or like brain rot or, all that stuff, right? So like, yeah, how would you approach this concept?
Yeah, I think for people, you'll see different ones online. People will
Yeah.
go to like week long retreats or weekends, and it's really finding what your own comfort zone. It's also going to depend on your individual preferences of how much is tech embedded into your life and your day to day, and also how is your emotional response to that as well. Because there are times for many of us it might be very overwhelming, and then there's other times where it's like, oh no, I could put it down and absolutely take a break. I am very open to it. And there's other people that are like, oh no, they're very resistant to that idea of a break. And so you could start really gradual where it could just, like you said, it could be a short time window, 15 minutes to a half hour. Some people I see start to do, half a day on a weekend where it's like we go and we do this in the morning, like a Saturday morning, we go for a walk and we go to brunch and we go in a park. And so it's like your morning is filled with other ways that you're connecting and kind of going around taking care of your other aspects of your health. And phones and devices are at home and you don't necessarily realize it, right? You have
Hmm.
other things kind of planned in, and that's what you're doing. And it's kind of, part of the plan, so to speak. Other people are doing the same thing when they're together. And so you can kind of find pockets of time. If you look at some people's spirituality practices, some of this is kind of built in where it is tech free or it's particular quiet times from sundown to sunset, and other things.
Hmm.
And you can think about ways of, can you go a whole day? Does it go a whole weekend? Is it just pockets of windows? And how does that fit for you, your family, your friends, or your circumstances? And also, what are you needing at the time? Some people may really need a 30-day detox where you can find some camaraderie among communities online where, hey, there are other people really trying to commit to this too because they realize they need to put better boundaries in place, or they need to take 30 days away from what they're saying and say, now I need to come back and put better boundaries in place so that I can have a healthier relationship with the way I'm engaging with social media and content online. So finding kind of where that works, but you can be very gradual from a half hour to an
Hmm.
hour. With a lot of people like to start with that first hour of their day and the last hour of their day, kind of bookending it that way of no content, no tech, no social media in those first and last hour.
Yeah, yeah, because like this is really interesting. Because for me, like about 4 years ago, I left all social media for like 16 months, right? And then like I'm Gen Z, right? So that was such a drastic change. Because I mean, most of us, I mean, almost all of us are born into like using the internet and social media and stuff like that, right? And that was one of the most focused and like productive phases of my life. Like it's really interesting how the world seems to change in terms of like how you look at it when you leave all these different forms of content. Now, would you say that like getting away from music, TV shows, and movies should be included in this, or are you talking more specifically about social media?
No, I think it's a great way. I like to say it's consumption of everything is your diet, because when we say diet,
Uh-huh.
people think just food. But
Food.
you're a
Yeah.
consumer of all of the things that are
Yeah, yeah,
your
yeah.
diet. And we tend to forget that, it's the social media, it's your news, it's the people
Yeah.
you spend your time with as well. It's where anywhere your energy is going, as well as
Hmm.
where you're receiving things from. And so, really, I like to think of that diet as that holistic way. So, yes, all of those things you said. And so, yes, you don't want to replace one with the other and all of a sudden just go from social media to binge watching Netflix and Hulu, right? You want to
Exactly.
kind of find this holistic balance. And for some reason, we tend to forget that we're consumers of all of the things until maybe one
Hmm.
becomes out of balance. And, it's different when you're sick and you're at home. Yes, you probably end up watching more shows because you're needing to rest. But it's finding
Hmm.
that holistic balance of all of those areas of your life. And, I grew up with a mom, and I joke, and to this day, I credit her for this. She used to be a little bit strict, but I said, my mom was wise because we were allowed 2 hours of TV max a day. And
A
everyone, when I
day.
joke with this, they're like, what did you do? I said, we played outside and we read. I read a lot, and I still read quite,
Yeah. 2 hours
quite
is
a
quite a
bit.
lot of time though.
Yeah, I said we didn't
Yeah.
play video
Yeah.
games. Most of the time, we didn't even watch 2 hours of
Yeah,
TV.
that's a lot. That's a lot of TV time. You know what I mean? Like if you really sit down and watch 2 hours, that's a lot of TV time. You know what I mean?
And that was throughout the whole day.
Hmm.
And I said there were times we would
Exactly.
negotiate, like if we had a sleepover, we'd have to bank it. So if we had friends over, you could
Mm.
watch a little longer. But I was like, we really didn't. And as a kid, like that was a lot of time because shows were like 20 minutes. Like if you look at
Yeah,
kids
exactly.
shows are really short for a reason because of their attention span.
Attention span. Yeah, 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 yeah.
And I'm just
Hmm.
as bad as an adult because when someone's like, this movie's over this long, I'm like, that's a time commitment. I can't sit that long.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So it pretty much comes down to what type of energy are you like actually letting into your life, right? And then
Mhm.
based off of that, you can see, okay, what seems to help me, what's not helping me, and then try and stay away from those energies that are taking away from you, right? Because movies can be really helpful, but again, it comes down to like what you're actually watching. Because even when it comes down to content, it can be really broad, right? Because again, for example, on YouTube, there's a lot of horrible content and a lot of great content, right? So it really comes down to how you choose to, as you mentioned again, to like target your attention. Like who do you give your attention to and what do you give it to? And then I guess you can kind of work backward from there and figure it out based on your own needs and then kind of go from there.
Yeah, and I love that the way you worded that too is to make sure you're doing that check-in on yourself
Yeah.
and how you're feeling and being open to is like this is going to change with us. Our emotional states change, our needs change as we go. We're
Yeah.
humans. We're constantly evolving and changing as we're growing and flourishing throughout our
Hmm.
lives. So the idea is that our needs are going to change with that too.
Yeah.
And so to keep that in mind, what serves us now might not serve us in the future. And maybe something that worked for us in the past may resurface again. It might become a really supportive tool for our health and our well being. But in a moment or in a scenario that we're going through now, it might not be the tool. There are certain times where self care strategies don't meet a certain stressor. I've had people
Yeah.
say that a lot about, when you go through a big life event, sometimes sitting in the mindfulness practices isn't what you need because you're not ready to deal with that emotion. And I will always say, of course, you're working through this with could be your mental health providers or not, but it's like there's a time and a place for certain tools, and those may ebb and flow. But just to have that level of awareness of,
Hmm.
this helped me before in the past when I went through a similar emotion, I can try it. And if it doesn't serve me now, I don't need to judge the tool. I can let it go. And maybe I bring it back again in the future. There's lots of different tools and strategies to try and to just keep that open mind and that kind of lifelong learner mindset of we don't need to judge it. If it doesn't work, it's just not the tool for the moment and the time. We'll go to the next one.
Absolutely. Absolutely.